Hi, and welcome to the Podcast Engineering Show. My name's Chris. I'm going to do my full intro at the end of this episode. I'm just going to get right to it. I'm going to give you 10 terrific tips for podcast production. The first one is the age-old debate over editing out breaths versus leaving breaths in. And of course, breaths are, when you speak and then you take in a breath and then you speak longer and then you take in a breath. Those are the breaths I'm referring to. And the funny thing, some people really don't like the sound of breaths. They listen to someone talking and they hear breaths and they just don't like it. So they actually cut them out. They delete all the breaths. Now, I do not do that. I never delete breaths. And the reason I don't is because I think they're natural, and I think it's part of the person's delivery. And again, they're natural. So most listeners, when they listen to podcasts, even though there are breaths in the podcast, they don't really hear the breaths. Now, of course, if you use too much compression, then the breaths become louder and louder, and then they'll probably catch the listener's attention. But in general, breaths are normal. What I tell my students is to go listen to some pop music that's on the radio. Listen to the vocalists singing, and you will hear their breaths are at least as loud as their vocals because they use quite a bit of compression usually with pop music. So, but how many pop songs have you heard in your life? I bet you never even those breaths never even registered with you. Why? Because they're natural. Your brain expects it. So the point is, with breaths, you can edit them all out. You can leave them in. You can use what I call the Emily Prokop technique, which is you cut out all the breaths, put them on their own track, and you lower the volume. That's a cool technique. But yeah, breaths are normal. Let me know what you do with breaths, if anything. All right, second one, how to handle clients that won't heed your advice to improve their audio quality. So if you're an editor or a podcast producer, you may have clients, and some of their audio quality might not be that great, and you might keep trying to persuade them to do certain things to improve their audio quality, like maybe get a better microphone or use better microphone technique. And some clients will listen to you and they will improve their sound. Others will not. They just won't listen because they don't understand what you're talking about. They don't understand the importance of good audio, and they really don't care. They just don't want to buy anything else. They don't want to do anything else. They don't want to give their attention to anything else. They just want to do whatever they're doing, and they want to rely on you to fix their sound and produce the episodes and all that. So some of the bad habits that podcast hosts have are, like I said, bad microphone technique, where they vary the distance from the microphone. So sometimes they're really loud and other times they're really soft. Background noise, sometimes there's a lot of background noise. And it's like they have an air conditioner on in the room and you're like, could you please, when you record your episodes, could you please turn off the air conditioner? And they just either forget or they don't want to. And they say, no, I don't, it's hot in my room. I don't want to turn it off. Okay. Table thumps, sometimes they'll be putting things down on their desk or their table and it'll rattle through the microphone and you'll have these big thumps. That happens a lot with the Blue Yeti. That's when it's sitting on a desk. Sometimes they don't have plosive protection. So their plosives and their P's, they have these enormous thuds and it's very jarring. And also, and other things too. So look, you can recommend all these things to your client to help them sound better. But some clients, they don't care. I don't know why, but they don't care. So at some point, you may get tired of this and, because their bad habits will cause you to do a lot of extra work in post-production. So instead of spending 2 hours on post-production, you might have to spend 3 hours. So that's an extra hour and you might get tired of that. So you know what you might have to do eventually is fire them as a client. Just say, look, things are changing. I'm not going to renew our contract. And if you want me to recommend any other podcast producers or editors, let me know. And if they say, wait, why don't you want to work with me? And you could say, well, I've told you 25 times to help. I've tried to help you improve your audio quality and you just don't care. And it takes me a lot of work and that's too much work. So yeah, I mean, you could offer to raise your rates, but no, they're not. If they're not going to improve their sound a tiny bit, then they don't want to pay more money either, usually. All right, let's move on to the next daily goodie. Using pixels to track podcast ad stats. So this is actually a post that I found that I linked to in the daily goodie post. So I don't really have much to add to this, but I guess I didn't mention it because I'm doing my intro at the end, but I'm linking to every single one of these daily goodies in the show notes here. So if you click through to this daily goodie, using pixels to track podcast ad stats, you can click through to the article. It talks all about pixels and I don't know much about that stuff, but I know it's a good article. I did read through it. Other people said it was good. So check that out. The next post we're going to cover is reasons I sometimes use volume boost in my podcast player app. So yeah, I use Podcast Addict as my podcast player app, and they do have a volume boost button. It's, either on or off, and it's volume boost. And I find myself using it quite a bit. One thing about podcasts is I'd say at least half the podcasts in the world, they don't really produce their audio very well. So their dynamic range is quite high, meaning sometimes the audio gets really loud and then sometimes the audio gets really quiet. And of course, in the real world, when you're trying to listen to an episode like that, it can be difficult to hear the quiet parts, especially when you're listening in an area that has a lot of background noise. Like if you're driving in a car, there's all the road noise. So if the podcast host starts like whispering really quietly, you're not going to hear that. It's going to get buried in the road noise. So in cases like that, what I do is I turn on the volume boost in Podcast Addict, and whatever app you're using, it probably also has like a volume boost function. So I turn that on because what it does is it's either a compressor or a limiter or both. But what it does is it raises the volume of everything. And then, of course, the loud parts that it's raising, it sort of has to compress a little bit. So to me, it helps even out the volume of the episodes when I turn on the volume boost. So sometimes, for instance, one participant will be much louder than the other participant. And it just sounds weird. So I turn on the volume boost and it kind of helps to even out the volume of the different participants. So anyway, that's just one scenario. And again, also if the podcast is very extremely dynamic, then the volume boost actually helps because it does do some limiting and or compression. So yeah, check that out. I find that very handy. All right, next one. The Rode Broadcaster microphone. I don't know if you know this microphone. It's called the Rode Broadcaster. It's about $419, so it's not cheap. And it's a condenser microphone. And it's kind of rare in the podcasting space, although some people do use it. I believe Adam Carolla uses it or has used it. I think I remember seeing him on video, and I think it was a Rode Broadcaster. So it's a condenser, so it's very articulate, very crystal clear, and it's a really good mic. I actually bought it, and I tried it, and it just wasn't the perfect fit for my voice, but it is a pretty cool microphone. So for some people's voices, it might be a really good one. But of course, at $420, you might not want to, well, if you're going to buy it to try it out, just make sure you can return it, right? If it's not a good fit for you. Okay, next one. What equipment do you recommend for new podcasters? So as a podcast editor or producer, I'm sure you've had clients or potential clients that approach you and say, hey, what microphone should I buy? Or what interface should I buy? So I actually created a post titled, An Inexpensive Podcasting Equipment Setup to Sound Great. So, and in that post, I spell out what microphone you could get, and I basically listed, 3 inexpensive USB microphones, the Audio-Technica ATR 2100 and the Samson Q2U. And those are fine because, and the thing with beginning podcasters, USB microphones are very handy because they don't need to buy an interface in addition to a microphone, right? They just have to buy the USB mic, and the microphone acts as the microphone and the interface, right? That's what a USB microphone is in essence. It's a microphone and an interface. So for beginners, that's nice and easy because all they have to do is buy the USB microphone and plug it in USB, and they're ready to go. I also list a microphone stand here, one that a short microphone stand that they can place on their desk just to get the microphone high enough, a foam windscreen, and a mic clip, which is a shock mount mic clip. So I will link to that post. You could check that out. And if you do, recommend microphones or interfaces to your clients, then definitely let me know. Let me know what you're suggesting to clients. I'd love to know in the comments here, or yeah. All right, the next one we're going to cover is the FabFilter Pro DS. This is a plugin made by FabFilter, the Pro DS. It's an exceptional de-esser plugin. Really, this is one of the 2 de-esser plugins that I consider to be the best options in the world, really. So here's the FabFilter Pro DS. The other one I like even better is the Soothe plugin. Soothe 2, it's called. It's amazing to use as a de-esser. But FabFilter Pro DS, it's a great de-esser. It's very transparent. It has very accurate detection of the sibilance. It actually shows you where the sibilance is when it occurs, so it helps you really dial in where the sibilance is. You can use your eyes to see where the sibilance is happening. And you can also use it in wideband mode or split band mode. So you can have essentially 2 de-essers de-essing different frequency ranges, or you can just have one wider band de-esser. It really does sound great. It's easy to use. I mean, FabFilter as a plugin company is just great. They make some of the best plugins, and the user interfaces of the FabFilter plugins are second to none. They're very visual, very intuitive. They're just great. Everybody loves FabFilter. I do. I own all their plugins. It's great. So, all right, my page is refreshing here. Here we go. Next one. When a remote guest's internet fails and they disconnect. Yeah. Have you ever been recording a podcast episode and all of a sudden the guest disconnects and they're gone? I mean, if you've done probably more than 20 or 30 episodes, then this has probably happened to you, right? So what happens, usually either their internet connection goes down or their Wi-Fi connection on their end goes down. Something happens, right? Now, most times that a guest disconnects, they will usually reconnect within about 10 seconds or 20 seconds. Usually they just have to refresh their page, or there was some glitch and they refresh and they come back to the session. So if someone does disconnect, just hold on and be calm for at least 30 seconds because they're probably going to come right back. I'd say at least 90% of the time, they just come right back. Now, if they don't come right back, then you should try calling them, and hopefully you have their phone number. This is why you should have the phone number of every guest before you start recording. Because if some weird connection issue happens and they drop off and they're not coming back, it's very handy if you can call them on the phone, right? So that's why you should always have the phone numbers of the guests before you start recording. And also, here's a big thing. Do not stop recording when a guest disconnects. Don't stop the recording. Just let it roll. Let it roll. Because if you stop it, then and then if they come back, then you have to restart it. Now you're going to have 2 separate files for each person, and you're going to have to line them up. So usually you can just let it roll and you don't have to stop recording. Now, of course, if you have to call them on the phone and they're still having trouble and it's like 10 minutes and they're still having trouble, okay, maybe then you can stop the recording, but don't rush to stop the recording of the episode, because most likely they're going to come right back. And even if you have to call them, they'll be able to come back pretty soon, and then you just continue recording as if nothing happened, and then it's just easier. So, all right, next one we're going to discuss, I think this is the second to last one, and this is the custom settings I dial in for people. I use the Sheps Omnichannel plugin from Waves. It's a plugin that's a channel strip, meaning that it has EQ and compression and a gate and a limiter and 2 de-essers. It's really a great plugin for podcasters because it has everything. Like I said, as a gate, it even has saturation, of course, EQ, compression, de-essers, limiter. It's really handy. Almost everything's in one plugin, right? And when I say everything, I mean in the mixing phase, right? When you're optimizing the audio, it doesn't have all the cleanup stuff like denoise or deplosive or, getting rid of hums, things like that. It's not a cleanup plugin. It's a mixing plugin. It's an enhancing plugin. The cleanup stuff, I always use Isotope RX for all my cleanup. But when I bring the audio into my DAW to mix it, that's where you would use something like the Sheps Omnichannel, because you can use the EQ, the compressor, and you can use a de-esser if there's sibilance. So anyway, it's a great plugin, and it usually only costs like $29 or $39. It's really, for the money, it's amazing. I always recommend it to every podcaster. So what I do, I offer to dial in custom settings for people. So people can sign up, and I charge, I think it's $195, and you send me a raw recording of your voice, and then I'll dial in the settings into the Sheps Omnichannel, and then I'll send you a file of the settings, which you can load into your Sheps Omnichannel. And so it's basically like me, an accomplished audio engineer, dialing in the settings very precisely for your voice or, anyone's voice. So anyway, that's a service I offer. I just wanted to, that's actually a daily goodie I wrote. All right. And I believe this is the last one. Is this the last one? Yeah, this is the last one. Editing the timing between a question and the answer. All right. This is very basic, obviously, right? But if you have an interview happening, then one person's going to ask a question and then the other person's going to answer. And normally, if everybody has a fast, good internet connection, this back and forth is very natural and it's not a problem. Usually you don't even have to edit the timing between a question and the answer. But sometimes if someone's internet is lagging, they won't hear the question immediately, and so they'll start answering late. There'll be the gap between the question and the answer will be a bit too long, and it feels very weird. It's like, for the listener is what I'm talking about, because don't forget, all of our audio production is for the benefit of the experience of the listener. So if there's too long of a time between the question and the answer, that's very strange for the listener. So obviously when you edit that, you can cut down the time between the question and the answer and make it sound natural. I've even had it work the other way, where there's some weird drifting going on over the internet between the guest and the host, where in post-production, the host will not even finish asking the question, and then the guest will start answering already. And of course, you can fix that in post-production as well. You just slide the guest track back maybe like 1 or 2 seconds to make that timing natural. So It's all about naturalness. You want it to sound like a nice flowing conversation, nice and natural. That's the goal. And if it's not natural, you can either, cut out some space or make some space. So that's the power you have as an editor and a producer. So, all right, well, that's the last Daily Goody I wanted to cover. And, the Daily Goody, I've been mentioning Daily Goody. Well, what the heck is a Daily Goody? Well, it's the blog posts I write 2 to 3 times a week. You can actually sign up to receive them in your email. And they're cool. They're just simple little tips, techniques. None of them are super profound within themselves. But what happens is if you keep learning little by little over time, you will gain a ton of knowledge, and you will be a professional podcast producer and editor before you know it. You'll just soak up all these little tips. So this is the podcast, and now I'll do my intro, okay? This is the Podcast Engineering Show. My name is Chris Curran. I teach at Podcast Engineering School. Our main program at Podcast Engineering School is where I teach people to learn how to produce podcasts professionally so you can work from home, earn really good money producing podcasts for other people around the world. It's great. It's a great skill to have. You'll have it for the rest of your life. It's almost like job security, right? When you become a professional, you're going to be able to find clients and get jobs and everything like that. So that's what the program does. The next course starts on April 4th, 2023. And as I mentioned, I listed all the posts we talked about today in the show notes with links. So if you want more information on any of the posts I mentioned, just go to the show notes and click through. So thank you for listening. And if you ever have any questions, don't forget, you can always contact me. On the website, there's a contact page. If you have a question, just send me your question. It's podcastengineeringschool.com, and just click on contact. And even if you just want to say hi, I like saying hi to people. I like knowing people are there. And also I have a smaller course, FYI. It's called Getting New Clients at Higher Rates. And it's all about helping podcast editors and producers get new clients and higher paying clients, right? Because you should charge what you're worth. You should have, if you want to have a smaller number of clients that are paying you a lot more, that's great. That's what I teach in the course. Maybe right now you have many, many, many clients that are driving you absolutely mad, and you're not charging very much. You're not even making that much money. So I like teaching people how to do the other way. Have a handful of clients and make even more money than if you had 100 clients. So, all right, well, that's it. Thanks. Sorry I haven't had an episode in a little while, but, things are happening and everything's okay, and I hope you're doing well. And again, reach out if you just want to say hi or if you have any questions. And I'll see you in the next episode. All right. See ya.